The day began with a strange quiet. The city, vibrant and alive yesterday, seemed to hold its breath. Word of Daniel's triumph in the trials had spread like wildfire. Citizens gathered in the streets, some in curiosity, others in awe, and a few in disbelief. The council chambers were filled with whispered debates and sharp glances. Some wanted to challenge the human's role as the queen's consort, while others had no choice but to respect his accomplishments. Saria stood at the palace balcony, her silver hair catching the light of the twin suns. She looked over the city, her expression steady but thoughtful. In the days since the trials, she had grown more confident in Daniel, and yet the lingering distrust in her court worried her. Daniel was not just a stranger from another world. He represented a new way of thinking, one that some feared. Behind her, the doors opened softly. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes scanning the city below. "They watch us," he said, almost to himself. Saria turned, a faint smile touching her lips. "Let them watch. They see what you have proven. Strength and courage are clear to all now, but they will test us still." Daniel nodded. "Then we show them together." The council had called a meeting in the Great Hall, a chamber that stretched high with crystalline arches. Every member of the council was present, their faces masks of cautious respect and hidden doubt. Daniel followed Saria inside, keeping his steps deliberate, his eyes forward. This was the moment of judgment, where his role as the queen's consort would either be accepted or rejected. The eldest counselor rose first. His robes shimmered like molten silver. "Your Majesty," he said, inclining his head slightly, "your survival is a miracle. This human, he has endured trials meant for warriors of the highest caliber. Yet you must consider the implications. Can he truly serve as consort?" Saria's voice was firm, unwavering. "He has proven himself. The trials are not for the weak. He has passed them all. Strength of body is only one measure. Courage, loyalty, and wisdom are far greater. Daniel possesses them all." Daniel stepped forward, his heart racing, yet his voice steady. "I am here not for power, not for glory. I stand with the queen because I believe in her, because I honor her trust, and because I choose to. I do not ask for their acceptance. I only ask for the chance to protect her, and to stand by her side as she leads her people." The council murmured among themselves, a low hum of voices filled with tension. Some counselors looked unconvinced, others impressed. Finally, the eldest counselor raised his hand, silencing the room. "You have faced the trials, human," he said slowly. "You have shown courage where most would falter. You have demonstrated loyalty and wisdom beyond your kind. While tradition is not easily broken, it is clear you are worthy." A collective breath swept through the hall. Daniel exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. But he knew this was only the beginning. Tradition was a strong force, and not all would accept him without continued proof. Over the next days, Daniel worked alongside Saria, learning the ways of her court. He was trained in diplomacy, in customs, in the delicate art of balancing authority with compassion. He walked through the city, greeting citizens, helping resolve disputes, and observing the challenges faced by Saria's people. With each passing day, Daniel grew more confident. He realized that being the queen's consort was not just about honor, it was about responsibility. He carried a weight far heavier than any physical challenge, but he embraced it with the same determination he had shown in the trials. Saria often joined him, walking beside him through markets, council chambers, and even the training grounds. She observed his interactions with patience and pride, sometimes offering guidance, sometimes allowing him to make mistakes and learn from them. Through it all, their bond deepened. The moment in the cave, when he had touched her wound to save her life, had been the start. Now that bond had grown into mutual respect, trust, and something deeper, something they both understood but rarely spoke aloud. One evening, the city held a celebration in their honor. Lanterns floated in the sky, casting a warm glow over the plaza. Citizens cheered as Saria and Daniel entered hand in hand. Music filled the air, a melody both alien and familiar. Daniel marveled at the beauty of it, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. Saria leaned close to him, her voice soft. "Do you feel it?" He glanced at her. "The city?" She shook her head, a faint smile curving her lips. "The bond between us. It is stronger than the trials, stronger than fear. It is real." Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "It has always been real. I just didn't understand it at first." As they walked through the plaza, Daniel noticed people watching with admiration. some with lingering skepticism. But most were smiling, bowing, or simply observing the human who had stood beside their queen through trials that no one thought he could survive. The celebration continued late into the night, but Daniel and Saria found a quiet moment atop one of the palace towers. The city stretched below them, a sea of lights and shadows. The twin moons hung low, casting silver beams across the walls. Saria turned to him, her expression serious but tender. "Daniel, the world outside will test us. Some will never accept you. Some will try to harm us. But know this, our bond cannot be broken by fear, by doubt, or by threat. You have chosen me. I have chosen you, and that is enough." Daniel took her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, the strength of her presence. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes, I will not leave your side." Her eyes glowed softly and she leaned closer. "You have earned more than survival, Daniel. You have earned trust, respect, and my heart." For a long moment they stood together in silence, the city beneath them buzzing with life, unaware of the quiet, unspoken vow they shared. In the following weeks, Daniel's role as consort became official. Counselors who had doubted him either fell silent or accepted him begrudgingly. Citizens began to speak of the human who had proven himself worthy, a symbol of courage and determination. Daniel worked tirelessly, learning, observing, and assisting Saria in every possible way. His presence brought a new perspective to the throne, one rooted in humility, honesty, and compassion. Saria and Daniel grew closer, their bond no longer defined by the trials alone. They spoke openly of fears, hopes, and the future of their people. Daniel shared stories of Earth, teaching Saria about his world. In turn, she taught him the ways of her people, the history of her kingdom, and the delicate balance of power that guided them. One afternoon, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Daniel asked quietly, "Saria, do you ever wonder what might have happened if I hadn't found you in the cave?" She turned, her glowing eyes meeting his. "I do, and I shudder at the thought. But fate brought you to me. The universe chose, and now I cannot imagine life without you." Daniel felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Then I suppose I have no choice but to stay." She laughed softly, a sound that echoed like music through the balcony. "And I would have it no other way." Months passed and peace settled over the city. Daniel continued to serve as consort, advisor, and protector. Assassins and rivals still plotted, but his courage and ingenuity, combined with Saria's strength, made them nearly unstoppable. Together, they faced threats both external and internal, solidifying their bond and the loyalty of the people. Their love, born from an unexpected act of care in a cave, had grown into something unshakable. The moment Daniel cleaned her wound, saving her life, had set in motion a series of events that neither could have predicted. But now, standing together, they had proven that courage, heart, and trust could bridge worlds, and so, the human and the alien queen, bound by an unbreakable connection forged in the shadows of danger and the light of trust, faced the future together. The city below thrived, the council watched with respect, and the stars above shone as witnesses to a bond that transcended worlds, species, and expectations. Daniel had arrived as a stranger, stranded and uncertain. He remained not only as protector but as partner, companion, and spouse. And in the heart of the alien queen, he had found a home he had never known he was seeking. Their story was no longer about survival. It was about trust, courage, and love, the kind that could change worlds. The trials were over, but the adventure had only just begun. Together, they would face the challenges of the future, side by side, bound not by tradition alone, but by choice, by loyalty, and by a connection forged in the most extraordinary way imaginable. And as the twin moons rose once more over the alien city, Daniel and Saria stood together on the palace balcony, ready to face whatever the universe would send next. The storm raged outside the cave for hours, but inside it was quiet, heavy with unspoken meaning. Daniel sat near the entrance, listening to the howling wind and the occasional crack of thunder. Behind him, the alien woman rested against the wall, her breathing steady but shallow. He glanced at her often, unsure what to make of her words. Spouse. That single word kept repeating in his mind. He had touched her wound to save her, but to her people, it meant something much greater. He didn't even know her name. And now, she was calling him something that bound them together in a way he didn't understand. Daniel sighed and rubbed his hands over his face. He had been trained for survival, for exploration, for fixing machines, but he had never been trained for this, accidentally becoming tied to an alien royal. When dawn finally broke, the storm quieted. Sunlight slipped through the cave's opening, casting soft light on her silver skin. She stirred, lifting her head. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, meeting his. "You... human," she said slowly. Her voice was thick with an accent, but clearer than before. Daniel nodded. "Yes, human." He pointed to himself. "Daniel." She tilted her head, repeating it carefully. "Daniel." He smiled faintly. "That's right." Then he pointed to her, questioning. "You?" For a moment she studied him. Then she said, "Syria." Daniel repeated it softly. "Syria." The name fit her. Elegant, commanding, but also somehow fragile in that moment. She seemed satisfied and leaned back against the wall. But her gaze did not leave him. She watched every movement, as though weighing him. Daniel opened his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He ate half and after hesitation held the other half out to her. She looked at it suspiciously, then at him, before finally taking it. She sniffed it, then bit carefully. Her eyes widened, slightly. It wasn't the food of her people, but it was edible. Slowly she finished it, keeping her eyes on him the entire time. For a while they sat in silence, sharing food in the quiet cave. Finally, Syria spoke again, her voice steady though her words were broken. "You, clean wound. Sacred act. You must not know?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I didn't know." She studied him for a long time, then said, "Among my kind, only chosen bond touches queen's wound. Deep wound is sacred. You have done this, you, now bound." Daniel's stomach twisted. Bound? He hadn't chosen that, he had just wanted to help. "I didn't mean," he started, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "Not mistake," she said firmly. "You showed courage. You saved life. Universe sees." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. He wanted to argue, to explain that he had only done what anyone would have done. But when he looked at her, at the pain in her eyes and the strength in her posture, he found no words. "All right," he said quietly. "If that's what it means to you, then I'll stay, at least until you're healed." Syria's expression softened. For the first time, Daniel saw something other than command in her eyes. Gratitude. The next few days became a rhythm. Daniel cleaned and changed her bandages daily, each time careful, each time feeling the weight of her gaze. She barely flinched, even when the pain was sharp. She spoke more often, her human words improving little by little. She told him fragments of her story. She was not just a leader, but the queen of her people. Her rule had been challenged and assassins had struck her down, leaving her for dead in the wilds. She had crawled to the cave to escape. Daniel listened, stunned. He had known she was important, but not that important. He looked at her differently after that, not just as an alien he had saved, but as someone carrying the weight of a kingdom. In turn, she asked about Earth. Daniel told her of oceans, forests, and skies filled with aircraft. He spoke of simple things, coffee, music, laughter. She listened intently, as though these small details of his world were treasures. One evening, while Daniel was checking the wound again, she spoke softly. "On my world, bond is more than words. When you cleaned my wound, you accepted fate. You may not see it, but I feel it." Daniel paused, looking at her. "Where I come from, we don't bond like that. Not by accident." Her gaze was steady. "No accident. Universe brings together what must be. I bleed. You heal. You risk life, I trust you. That is bond." Daniel wanted to deny it, to push back. But deep inside, he couldn't. The connection between them was real, even if he didn't understand it. That night, as the stars shone through the cave entrance, Saria leaned closer. "Daniel, you are no longer stranger. You are mine." The words were not a threat nor a demand. They were a statement of belief, of certainty. And though Daniel felt fear at the weight of it, he also felt something else, a strange warmth. The next morning, danger came. Daniel woke to the sound of movement outside the cave. He grabbed his tool and crouched low. Shadows flickered just beyond the entrance. Saria stiffened, her eyes narrowing. "Hunters," she whispered. A moment later, 3 figures entered. They were armored aliens, similar to her kind but less regal. Their weapons glowed faintly and their eyes locked onto Saria with cold intent. Daniel's heart pounded. He was just one man, unarmed, against 3 alien soldiers. But when he saw, the way Saria's hand trembled, still weak from her wound, something inside him hardened. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the intruders. One of the aliens barked words Daniel didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. They wanted Saria dead. Daniel gripped his tool tighter. His voice was steady. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The aliens laughed, mocking him. To them, a human was nothing, weak and breakable. But Saria's eyes widened. She had not expected him to stand like that, small and fragile compared to armored killers. When the first alien lunged, Daniel dodged and swung his tool with all his strength, cracking it against the attacker's helmet. The alien stumbled back, surprised. The fight was uneven, but Daniel fought with desperation. He blocked, dodged, struck wherever he could. Saria, despite her wound, rose to her feet. She summoned energy from within, a royal power that flared like light around her. Together, Daniel's stubborn bravery and her weakened but fierce will, they forced the hunters back. The attackers retreated, snarling promises of return. Breathing hard, Daniel lowered his tool. His arms shook. He had no idea how he had survived that. Saria stepped closer, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You protect me. You fight. Without fear." Daniel gave a shaky laugh. "I was terrified." But she shook her head. "Fear, but still fight. That is strength." For a long moment, they stood there breathing the same air, their bond stronger than before. Daniel realized then that he was no longer just surviving with her. He was part of her struggle, part of her fate. And perhaps, whether he chose it or not, part of her heart. The fire outside the cave had died hours ago, leaving only ash glowing faintly under the alien sun. Daniel sat near the entrance, sharpening a broken piece of metal into a crude blade. His arms ached from the fight the day before, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew the 3 hunters would not be the last. Behind him, Saria rested, her back straight even though her wound had not fully healed. Her pride would not allow her to look weak. She had been born to rule, and even in exile, her presence filled the cave with an air of command. When Daniel glanced at her, he noticed her eyes fixed on him. She was studying him again, as she often did. It made him uneasy, as though she was measuring something inside him he couldn't see. "You stood before hunters," she said suddenly. Her voice was stronger now, her words clearer in human tongue. "Few would do this. Even my own guards failed me. But you, human with no armor, stood." Daniel shrugged lightly. "I couldn't just let them take you." She tilted her head, her silver hair falling over her shoulder. "Why? You are not of my world." "You owe me nothing." Daniel paused. He hadn't asked himself that question. Why had he stepped forward knowing he could die in an instant? The answer was simple, though. Because it was the right thing to do. Her gaze softened. She didn't reply, but the silence between them spoke volumes. By the 3rd day after the hunter's attack, Saria insisted she was strong enough to leave the cave. Daniel wasn't convinced, but she was determined. "If we stay, more will come," she said. "My enemies believe me dead. They will hunt until certain. We must reach the city. My court must see me alive." Daniel tightened his pack and nodded. "Then let's move." The journey across the alien landscape was not easy. The terrain shifted from sharp black rock to forests of glowing trees that whispered in the wind. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, watching with eyes like fire. Daniel kept close to Saria, ready to shield her if needed. Though she walked with the dignity of a queen, every step precise despite the pain she must have felt. They spoke little during the march, but every now and then she asked about Earth. Your world, does it know queens? Daniel chuckled. Yes, but not like you. Our queens are mostly symbolic now. They don't fight wars or face assassins. She gave a faint smile. Then perhaps your world is wiser. When night came, they rested under the twisted branches of a tree that glowed faint blue. Daniel started a small fire with his survival kit while Saria leaned against the trunk, her eyes never straying too far from him. Daniel, she said after a while, my people will not accept you easily. They see humans as fragile, weak. To them you will be insult to my throne. Daniel poked the fire with a stick. Then maybe it's better if I stay out of sight when we get there. Her eyes flashed. No, you touched my wound. You are bound. To hide you would shame me, and you have proven strength already. Daniel frowned. Strength? I barely survived against those hunters. But you did, she said firmly, and you stood when all others fled. That is greater strength than muscle or armor. Her conviction silenced him. He couldn't argue with the fire in her voice. By the time they reached the outskirts of the city, the alien sun was high. Towers of black stone rose in the distance, their tips glowing with faint energy. The city was alive, filled with ships darting in the sky and streets lined with markets. As they entered, whispers followed them. Citizens bowed to Saria, their eyes widening when they saw her alive. But then their gazes shifted to Daniel and the whispers turned sharp. A human walking beside their queen? It was unthinkable. Guards rushed forward, their armor gleaming. They dropped to one knee before Saria. Your Majesty, one of them said in their language, then switched to halting human speech. We believed you. Not lost, Saria replied coldly. She pointed to Daniel. This one saved me. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. One of them muttered something Daniel couldn't understand. But the contempt in his tone was clear. They escorted the queen to her palace, a grand structure of obsidian stone, lined with banners that shimmered like living fire. Inside, the air was heavy with incense and power. The council awaited her. 12 figures in regal robes sat in a half-circle, their faces sharp with suspicion. When Saria entered, they rose, shocked. You live, one of them said. Yes, she replied, her voice strong. And I return with truth. Those who struck me down have failed. Their eyes flicked to Daniel, who stood slightly behind her. Murmurs filled the chamber. A human in the queen's court was unheard of. One counselor sneered. What is this creature doing here? Saria lifted her chin. He is mine. The chamber fell silent. Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't expected her to say it so openly. Another counselor slammed his hand on the table. Unacceptable. A human cannot be consort to our queen. It dishonors the throne. Saria's gaze turned icy. He saved my life when none of you were there. He cleaned my wound, an act of bond. The stars themselves witnessed it. To deny him is to deny the law of our ancestors. The counselors erupted in protest. Some shouted that it was blasphemy. Others that it was weakness. Daniel stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Finally, the eldest counselor raised a hand, silencing the room. His eyes narrowed at Daniel. If the queen claims this human as consort, then let him prove it. Let him face the trials. The trials? Daniel whispered. Saria's jaw tightened. A test of worth. Strength, loyalty, and courage. Few survive. Daniel swallowed hard. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't built for alien trials. But as he looked at Saria, at the way she stood tall despite the council's doubt, he knew one thing. If he didn't stand now, she would lose everything. He stepped forward. I'll do it. The counselor smirked, certain he would fail. But Saria's eyes met his, and for the first time since the cave, she looked afraid for him. Daniel, she whispered. You don't have to. Yes, I do, he said softly. Because it's the right thing to do. That night, the city buzzed with rumors. A human would face the ancient trials of the throne. Some laughed at the idea. Others whispered of omens and destiny. In the palace, Saria sat with Daniel in a quiet chamber. The firelight flickered across her silver skin, casting shadows that made her look both fierce and fragile. You do not understand, she said, her voice low. These trials are not games. They are built to kill. Even warriors of my people fail. Daniel leaned back against the wall. Then tell me what I need to know. She looked at him for a long time, then sighed. The first is the trial of stone, endurance. The second is the trial of flame, courage. The last is the trial of shadows, loyalty. If you survive, none may question you. If you fail, her voice trailed off, but Daniel knew the answer. I'm not strong like your people, he admitted, but I'll try. Not just for me, for you. Her eyes softened, and for the first time she reached out, her hand brushing against his. You are already stronger than most, Daniel. You fight with heart. That may be enough. The next morning, the trials began. Crowds filled the arena, a circle of black stone where countless warriors had been tested before. The council sat high above, watching with sharp eyes. Syria stood at the edge, her gaze fixed on him, every breath heavy with worry. Daniel stepped into the arena, his heart pounding. He was no soldier, but as he looked up, meeting Syria's glowing eyes, he remembered why he was here. Not for glory, not for power, for her. And so, as the gates opened to reveal the first trial, Daniel raised his head, ready to face whatever came. The arena was vast, stretching across the heart of the alien city. Its walls were carved from black stone, etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly in the sunlight. Thousands of spectators had gathered, their eyes focused on the circle in the center where Daniel now stood. He was human, small and fragile compared to the towering alien warriors who had faced these trials before him. Every step he took echoed loudly against the stone, and he could feel the weight of countless gazes. Syria watched from the high platform above. Her back straightened and her glowing eyes never left him. The council had taken their seats as well, their expressions cold and unreadable. This was not a test of strength alone. It was a test of mind, heart, and spirit, and for Daniel, it was nothing like anything he had experienced before. The first trial was announced by a booming voice that seemed to come from the very walls of the arena. The trial of stone, it declared. Immediately, massive slabs of rock began to rise from the ground in the center of the circle. Some were smooth, others jagged, forming an uneven field. The objective was simple: traverse the field without falling or being crushed. But simplicity was deceiving. Daniel looked at the rocks. They shifted, moved, and even collapsed under their own weight. One misstep would send him crashing to the ground, or worse, being pinned. He took a deep breath, recalling Syria's words. You fight with heart. That may be enough. He stepped forward. His first few movements were careful, testing the stability of each slab. The rocks trembled beneath his feet. His muscles burned as he leaped, crouched, and balanced. A loud crack sounded as one massive stone tilted. Daniel jumped back just in time, his heart pounding. Crowds murmured. Some laughed, sure the human would fail. Others whispered, curious at his determination. Daniel ignored them. He focused on each step, thinking ahead, predicting which stones would hold and which would collapse. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Every muscle ached, every breath burned, but slowly, carefully he made it to the other side. His knees shook. Sweat ran down his brow, but he had survived the trial of stone. Above, Syria exhaled, her eyes shining with pride. She had feared for him, but now a faint smile curved her lips. The second trial began almost immediately. The trial of flame. The air shifted and the arena erupted with walls of fire that shot up in random patterns. Daniel could see other warriors struggle, their advanced armor barely protecting them. The heat was intense and the flames moved unpredictably as if alive. Daniel's first instinct was to run, but the flames blocked every obvious path. He looked around, assessing. His eyes fell on a pattern in the movement. The flames pulsed in a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but there was a chance. He waited for the right moment, then sprinted through the first wave, ducking under a sudden burst. His arms moved instinctively, shielding his face as he leapt across small gaps. One step too late, one misjudged jump, and the fire would have scorched him. The crowd held their breath. He kept moving, relying on his human intuition. He noticed how the air shimmered where the flames were weakest, predicting the safest path. His movements became faster, more confident. At the final section, the flames rose higher than ever. Daniel felt heat searing through the thin clothing of his survival suit. He had no armor, no protection, but he pushed forward using momentum and timing rather than strength. With a final leap, he landed safely beyond the fire. The crowd erupted, not in mockery but in awe. Saria's eyes glowed brighter. She had never doubted him completely, but witnessing him conquer the fire strengthened her belief in his resilience. The third trial was the most difficult, the trial of shadows. The arena darkened suddenly as if night had fallen. Shapes shifted and morphed around him, moving faster than he could track. Whispered voices filled the air, designed to confuse, distract, and terrify. Daniel's heart pounded.
He could not see the enemies clearly.
He could only rely on hearing, instinct, and trust in himself. The shadows attacked, their forms twisting, striking from all directions. Daniel dodged, blocked, and countered with his metal tool, but it was not enough to overpower them. He needed a strategy. Then he remembered Saria's words from the cave. Fear, but still fight. That is strength. He let his fear fuel his focus. Instead of trying to fight every shadow, he moved deliberately, observing patterns. Some shadows were illusions vanishing when he passed through. Others were real threats. By staying calm, he avoided unnecessary danger and attacked only when needed. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was meaningless in the shifting darkness. Sweat and blood mixed as he pressed forward, his mind sharpening with each decision. Step by step, he reached the center of the arena where a faint light now shone. The shadows dissolved into thin air, leaving him standing alone, exhausted, but victorious. He had survived all three trials. The crowd erupted into cheers. Humans were rare on this planet, and few had ever witnessed one face the ancient trials. The council looked shocked, murmuring among themselves. Many had expected Daniel to fail immediately, yet here he stood alive, triumphant and unbroken. Saria descended from her platform and approached him. Her silver hair glimmered in the sunlight, her eyes soft but fierce. "You have done what none expected," she said, her voice melodic but filled with awe. "You have survived where others would perish. You have proven your strength and your loyalty." Daniel lowered his head. "I only did what I had to do. For you." Her gaze softened even further. She reached out, brushing her hand against his shoulder. "It is not only strength of body that matters," she whispered. "It is courage. It is heart. And you have both." For the first time, Daniel felt the weight of what he had accomplished. He had not only survived, he had earned the respect of an alien queen and the council of her people. But he also realized something deeper. His bond with Saria had changed. It was no longer accidental, no longer just a moment in a cave. It was a connection forged through courage, trust, and care. In the days that followed, Daniel became a figure of fascination in the city. Citizens who had doubted him now whispered of his bravery. The council, initially hostile, could not deny his achievements. Some still resisted fully accepting a human as the queen's consort. But the trials had shown that Daniel possessed qualities beyond mere physical power, qualities that could not be measured by alien standards alone. Saria and Daniel spent more time together. She allowed him into chambers few humans could enter. They spoke of their worlds, of dreams, of fears. He learned of the complex politics of her people, the rival factions, the assassins, the threats that never rested. And she learned about Earth, its people, and its fragile yet persistent spirit. Despite the trials being over, the dangers were not. Some council members still plotted in secret, unwilling to accept a human at the queen's side. Assassins would return and enemies would challenge their bond. But Daniel had changed. He was no longer the explorer stranded on a strange world. He was a partner, a protector, and a symbol of what courage and heart could achieve. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the city, Saria spoke quietly to him. "Daniel, you have proven yourself to the council, to the people, and to me. But you must understand something. Our bond is not just about survival or trials. It is about trust, respect, and choice. I choose you, and you must choose me in return." Daniel looked at her, his heart swelling. He had never imagined himself in such a position. No spaceship, no Earth, no escape. Yet in that moment he knew. He would not run. He would not hide. He would stand beside her through danger and uncertainty, as her chosen partner. "I choose you," he said firmly. Saria's eyes glowed brighter, her expression softening in a way that made him feel warmth like the sun on his skin. "Then our bond is complete," she whispered. "And together, we will face whatever comes." Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware that a human and an alien queen had forged a bond that would change the course of history. And inside, Daniel felt something he had never felt before, He belonged not just to this world but to someone who had trusted him completely. The storm was worse than anything Daniel had seen before. His small supply shuttle shook like a leaf in the wind as lightning tore through the dark skies of the alien planet. He had been sent on a routine run to deliver medical goods to an outpost, but something had gone wrong with the ship's systems. The navigation unit had burned out, and before he could fix it, the shuttle had fallen through the atmosphere of a planet that wasn't even on his charts. The landing was rough. Metal screamed as the shuttle skidded across rocky ground and came to rest against a ridge. Smoke filled the cockpit and Daniel coughed as he unbuckled himself. His hands trembled, but his body was mostly fine, only a bruise or two. He was alive, but stranded. He grabbed his survival kit, his water filter, and his medical pack before leaving the broken shuttle behind. The air was heavy but breathable. Strange plants grew everywhere, tall and glowing faintly as if lit from inside. The ground pulsed with faint heat, like the planet itself was alive. Daniel tried to stay calm. He was a trained explorer, but he had never expected to be completely alone on an unknown world. He needed shelter. The storm above promised more destruction if he stayed in the open. He walked across rough stone paths, passing under giant arches of vines that curled like snakes. Strange noises echoed in the distance. Low growls, sharp cries, sounds of predators he couldn't name. He tightened his grip on the metal tool he carried. After nearly an hour of searching, Daniel found a shallow cave at the base of a cliff. He checked inside with his flashlight. It was empty, just damp rock and shadows. Perfect for the night. He began setting up a small thermal lantern. That was when he heard it. Soft, ragged breathing. Daniel froze. Slowly, he turned toward the deeper end of the cave. His light fell across a shape slumped against the wall. For a moment, he thought it was a trick of the shadows. Then the shape moved. It was not human. The figure was tall, with pale silver skin that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. A long crest of dark hair framed her face, and her eyes, large, glowing softly, stared at him with a mix of pain and suspicion. She wore armor that was cracked and bloodied, and across her back Daniel saw a wound that looked deep and raw. His first instinct was to back away. She was clearly alien and clearly dangerous. Her presence filled the cave with an aura of command, even in her weakened state. But then he saw the way she trembled, the way her breathing caught. She was hurt badly. Daniel's training took over. He raised his hand slowly, showing he had no weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice steady though his heart raced. The alien woman's eyes narrowed. She spoke in a language he didn't know, her voice deep and melodic. The words meant nothing to him, but the tone was clear. She was warning him to stay back. Daniel didn't move closer yet. Instead, he slowly lowered his pack to the ground and opened it, pulling out the universal medical kit. He held it up for her to see, pointing to her back wound. "You're hurt. I can help." For a long moment, she didn't respond. Her hand twitched near the blade at her side. Then, with visible effort, she shifted, letting her body slump against the wall again. It wasn't permission, not exactly, but it wasn't rejection either. Daniel took it as a chance. Carefully, he approached. The wound was worse up close. Her armor had been torn open across her shoulders, and something sharp had cut deep into her flesh. Alien blood, dark blue and thick, stained her skin and the ground. Infection was already setting in. If he didn't clean it, she might not last the night. "I need to clean this," Daniel murmured, mostly to himself, as he pulled out antiseptic foam and sterile cloth. His hands moved with practiced care. He had done this for injured crew before, though never for someone like her. The alien woman stiffened as he touched her back. A sound escaped her lips, a sharp intake of breath, not just of pain but of shock. She turned her head slightly, looking at him with wide eyes. Daniel hesitated. "I'm sorry. I'll be careful." He worked slowly, wiping away the dark blood, spraying the antiseptic foam, pressing the bandage against her wound. She remained still, though her body trembled. At one point, she whispered something under her breath, a word he couldn't understand, but the way she said it carried weight. Finally, the wound was clean and covered. Daniel let out a breath of relief. He sat back on his heels, his hands stained with blue. The alien queen, though Daniel didn't yet know she was a queen, turned to look at him fully now. Her glowing eyes studied him in silence. Then she spoke again, her tone softer, slower, as if choosing her words carefully. Daniel shook his head. "I don't understand." But then, to his surprise, she repeated herself in broken human speech, the words heavy on her tongue. "Only Spouse May do that." Daniel blinked.
Spouse?
She nodded weakly, her gaze never leaving his. Sacred act only. Chosen one touches wound. He felt his stomach drop. What had he just done? The cave was silent except for the storm outside. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the alien woman who now looked at him as if he had crossed some line he didn't even know existed. The night stretched on, filled with questions he couldn't answer. He had saved her life, but at what cost?